The Carolina Panthers 53-man roster, at least as it is today, is constructed. Let's talk about it. Hey folks, Carolina Dad here, host of the Two Growls, One Roar podcast. If you are here, please hit that subscribe button, follow, all those things. And if you're listening on the audio version of the podcast, please give this show a follow. It is greatly appreciated, folks. It's happened. We now have our roster, but I'll be cautious to say we have our roster for this point in time as we wait for the waiver wire to clear at 12 p.m. Eastern on August 28th. So we've got down from 90 to our final 53. There's a lot to discuss, so let's jump right in. Let's start off with the predictions that landed and are now actually factual. Amari Barno and DJ Wonnum going on the PUP list. They will not be available for at least the first 4 weeks of the season. Jonathan Brooks going on the non-football injury report, again, because his injury happened outside of the NFL. All those made sense. I am a little disappointed in DJ Wonnum missing this time because I think a lot of fans, when we lost Brian Burns, thought this signing was going to be significant. We're just going to, hey, let this man get healthy and see where it goes. Also, to the flip side, with Barno recovering from an ACL injury, which is understandable that it's going to take time. Same thing with Jonathan Brooks. We're going to be missing a pass rush. And as we go through the list today, I think the roster, at least the state that it's in, is going to change a lot over the next few days, hours, weeks, probably even into the season if there's a suitor for someone and for us to be able to obtain an edge outside linebacker. IR, this is designation with the ability to return, which is positive news, and that is Dane Jackson and Sam Franklin. So this means that both of these guys can come back. The timeline, I think originally for Dane Jackson was like 6 weeks. So my guess is maybe week 4, week 5, if things go as planned. Sam Franklin, we know, is going to take a little bit longer time. 2 other injuries that we'll call out. For injured reserve, these players are out for the year, unfortunately, and that is Tay Davis, linebacker, and then outside linebacker, Cam Gill. The only other injuries, I think, actually, that's not, before we get into, no, we're going to flip this and we're going to go through the active roster. Then we'll come back and look at who was waived, who was released, and keep this thing moving right along. So let's do it, folks. Here we go on the offensive side of the ball. And I did not correct the number at the top right, so I apologize. I was just on a 2-hour-long podcast with some great folks from What's Up, Doug, Two Fans in the Stand, Ricky, Panthers Prime podcast, doing a season outlook prediction. So I just tweaked these slides as I was finishing up there. Didn't get this corrected, but here we go. No questions about this. Bryce Young, Andy Dalton. The bigger question is Jack Plummer going to clear waivers? And I think yes, and you bring him back to the practice squad. Unfortunately, there was a change in the rule for the third quarterbacks that NFL teams could keep as an emergency quarterback tucked away on the roster. That's gone away. So now, and I think that really has to do with the player like being taken advantage of and being on the practice squad, not getting an NFL salary or being brought up as an emergency situation. The NFL Players Association made a statement that that's no longer the case. Learned that yesterday. So you do have these 2, and I do look for Plummer to come back. Running backs, I did miss on Mike Boone, and that was only because, I knew Raheem Blackshear's the younger, better back, good kick returner. I just thought that there was something happening there, but it wasn't. So I feel satisfied with this. We have Chuba Hubbard, Miles Sanders, and Raheem Blackshear. It's a big year for Miles Sanders, not just because of his contract. Now, he performed so poorly last year, but I want to see something. I want to see the next level. I know he's hearing what folks are saying, but this is it, folks. You keep 3 backs. The non-football injury list, like I said, for Jonathan Brooks, that gets you up to 5 on the roster. Next up, wide receiver. This one was a little bit surprising for the entire group for various reasons. The first 4 absolutely made sense. Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Jonathan Mingo, Xavier Legette. We get into the bucket with David Moore, Amir Smith-Marset, and Jalen Coker, and Terrace Marshall Jr. I'm a little bit surprised. I know the Panthers talked, and I didn't have Terrace Marshall making the list because I thought he could be traded, but there was no suitors. But we looked at Terrace Marshall, and when you compare him to these other three, David Moore, ISM, and Jalen Coker, I know he's not as versatile in the return game, but neither is Coker. I thought he'd have a little bit of an edge considering his camp and how well he performed. It's odd not to see him here, but the coaching staff went with what they knew. I don't think this is the roster that goes into the season. I think they brought on Amir Smith-Marset and Jalen Coker. Well, primarily Jalen Coker, brought him onto the active roster so that no one could claim him, which is valid, because if you put him out there, there is a good chance he gets picked up off waivers. Panthers made a decision. Let's bring him on the roster. Then once the practice squad becomes available, we make our waiver claims. There's a ability to kind of work the system, and then if we need to, move him down. How many 7 wide receiver formations do you know? How many 3 wide receivers? A little more of those, but we're not going to be trotting out 4th, 5th, 6th string guys very often. It's going to be that first bunch of guys, and a lot of it's going to be focused on Xavier Legette getting his and developing, as well as Jonathan Mingo. So a little bit surprising there. Also, we know Amir Smith-Marset and David Moore were battling back and forth throughout camp and the preseason with return duties. But you got 7 now. I don't think that's going to stay. Tight ends. This is unfortunate in a little bit because I would have rather had 4 tight ends than and 6 wide receivers, kind of split that. But we have Tommy Tremble, Jatavian Sanders, and Ian Thomas. It makes sense that you keep Ian if you're going to be a run-first team and going to run the ball a lot. Ian Thomas is a great blocking tight end. Unfortunately, not so much on the passing side. I really wanted a pass-catching tight end, and I know Jordan Matthews is older, and he's kind of coming alive later in his career. But I saw enough from him as a reliable weapon that I would have liked to see him make it. Now, I think they're hopeful he'll come back to the practice squad, but that's not a given. So kind of a bummer a little bit there. Not the greatest tight end room. I know Canales said the wide receiver room was probably the best room on the team. And I agree with that as far as depth. Offensive line closing out. So we end up keeping 25 offense, 25 defense right now. I think this could go down to 9, but I love the depth here with Austin Corbett, Damian Lewis, Robert Hunt, Ike Ekwonu, Taylor Moton, your starting lineup there. Brady Christensen, Chandler Zavala, who's had a great camp. Yosh Nijman, who's recovering off a pup. Cade Mays, who's a versatile backup. And then Andrew Raym. Andrew Raym played his way into this. He's the only true center on the team. He held his ground. And I think it's great for the Panthers to bring him on, considering Austin Corbett's injury history, which I know he's kind of riding away, but the fact he hasn't played center, that it's Austin's really, unless he gets extended to push out some of this money, there's going to be dead cap hits. It's his last year under contract right now. So I like bringing someone underneath that maybe you can develop and put on the practice squad. Hard to think that we keep 10, though. So I think, again, this is a similar situation with Raym, where I think once the practice squad opens, or Cade Mays, like you maybe have some movement back and forth. All right, offense done. Let's go to defense. On the defensive side of the ball, I think this was pretty cut and dry. And from my prediction standpoint, I think maybe 1 or 2 were off. Overall, it was pretty solid day for me, which it's not really about that. I think I hit on 47 out of 53, so 88% of the roster projection. Again, doesn't matter, but hopefully it instills a little bit of confidence in you as a listener of the show. We have Derek Brown, A'Shawn Robinson, LeBrian Ray, and Jaden Crumedy. Crumedy ended up making it. I think it's another similar boat. Hopefully he is going to be healthy coming off the sprain, but I'd like to see him develop, so I'm glad he made it. On the defensive side of the ball, Shai Tuttle, Nick Thurman, and Jaden Peavy, who had another outstanding camp. Great to see him and what he has done. Linebackers, we have Shaq Thompson, Josie Jewell, Trevin Wallace, and Claudin Cherilus. Pretty cutting, black and white group there. Easy to say, like, yeah, this is chalk. We knew these were going to be the picks. That's where it landed. So I don't think there's any confusion there. Outside linebacker is a room that needs some help. Not only do they need some talent, just depth wise. I don't think you take 4 outside linebackers into the season. I just don't know where you're going to find another right now. But you have Jadeveon Clowney, DJ Johnson, Iku Leota, Clavon Chasen. On PUP, you have Amari Barno and DJ Wonham, which we know both those guys on PUP coming off. Small group and a lot of pressure on Iku and DJ to step up, and Clavon. Jadeveon, I feel like he's going to have another good year, at least what we've seen in spurts. But that concerns me a little bit. Definitely concerns me when we look at this. Cornerbacks. J.C. Horn, DiCaprio Bootle, Mike Jackson, and Shaw Smith-Wade. Panthers did what I thought they would, moving Shaw into this group, which I know he can play outside and nickel. I still wouldn't be surprised if they run with the DB here. And Dane Jackson, again, was placed on IR, so, maybe hoping for a speedy recovery for him. Your nickel cornerback, which I know you have Shaw on here as well, Troy Hill. I think there was any question around that. And closing out the safety room, Jordan Fuller, Xavier Woods, Nick Scott, Jamie Robinson, and Damani Richardson. Great to see Damani make the cut. Another undrafted free agent. I think 3 undrafted free agents ended up making the 53-man roster. Close to that. I had it pulled up earlier, but around 3. Fantastic to see guys step up in these situations. Of course, speedy recovery for Sam Franklin. I was looking at a stat last night as the Tampa Bay Buccaneers were making their cuts just like all the other teams, and they got ahead of the game early. But I want to pull this up so that I correctly quote it. So Greg Allman, who covers the NFC South, tweeted out, "This is wild." And I agree with him. 44 of the Bucs' 53 players that are on their roster right now were either drafted by Tampa Bay or started as an undrafted free agent. You want to talk about a successful organization and what that means. I mean, that's it right there. You got to hit on your draft picks, got to hit on undrafted free agents. Cannot say that enough. The only folks from the outside are Baker Mayfield, Brinson, School, Walton, Gaines, Brown, Hall, Thomas, McLaughlin. Wild. 6. I mean, a small group. That's the way you want to build a foundation as an NFL team. And I know that that's what Dan Morgan is striving for here in the Carolinas. But man, hats off to the Tampa Bay organization. Anyways, folks, I will, of course, be active as much as possible as we learn about the waiver wire claims and what happens. But until next time, it's Carolina Dad. Y'all have a good one.